And good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. You can also catch us on YouTube.com. Go to YouTube.com and search the 98.9 WXCO channel, and you can see us talking to a microphone as well as hear us talking to a microphone. I am Chad Holmes, along with former Wausau West High School head football coach Jason Foster. Coming up this evening at the bottom of the first hour, we'll talk to Jason Wadzinski, the head football coach of the Merrill Blue Jays. And we won't be in live tonight. We'd like to be honest with everybody. He and I give him credit. Wednesday night apparently is the one night for his wife. She has something that happens and he needs to be, and he said he would come in. I said, no, I don't want to cause any marital issues. So we had a chance to talk to him last evening, 24 hours ago, in fact, almost to the minute. So I will talk to Jason Wadzinski coming up at 6:30. And then Corbin Enzenroth, the DC Everest running back senior. He's run for more than 400 yards the last 2 weeks, both Evergreen wins, and we'll talk to him about his team, his season, and a whole bunch more at 7:06. It's middle of the season. I went to 3 practices today. I decided because we have 3 games here on WXCO the next 2 days. So I went to East, I went to West, and I went to Newman, and we're in the midst. Is it time for the big push? Are we that far yet?
Yeah, I think we're at least at a point where things are starting to the picture's becoming a little more clear, right? We're starting to see some things. Probably, well, you went to all 3 today, and it's midway through September. It probably felt a little bit more like mid-August out there today.
I don't think it was this hot during training camp.
Yeah, it's something.
Exactly. So their guys were it was like training camp. Get the water, guys. Get the water. Because there was a lot of sweat. I was standing out there and I was sweating. So, so very, very warm out there. We have a week where we have a number of Thursday games and Friday games this week. So lots to talk about, but let's look back at week number 4 of the season. And as you said, I mean, now we have a couple of conference games under teams' belts, and some teams are feeling darn good, 2-0, getting closer to that clinching of a playoff berth, and other teams have some work to do. So let's start with the Wisconsin Valley Conference. You had the game again. We always like to talk about the game that we saw because we can sound somewhat intelligent to you. And we were over at Steam Stadium on Friday night, and the DC Everest Evergreens defeated Wausau West by a score of 17-0. So Everest now back-to-back wins in the conference, 2-0 in the league, 2-2 overall. Warriors also 2-2 overall, 1-1 in the conference. Our guest coming up later on in the show, Corbin Enzenroth, had 37 rushes for 237 yards and a touchdown. Sophomore quarterback Ty Rohde, he was the substitute, and he was 7 of 14 for 78 yards and an interception. Miles Walvogel had 9 rushes for 74 yards, 3 catches for 38 yards. And Joe Gravine had been hitting about 78% of his passes, and the Evergreen defense was tough against the Warriors, and Gravine was 6 of 15 for 66 yards. But so often it goes back to basics, and I think that was a game that kind of went back to basics right up front.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know as though the 17-0 score even kind of sums up how it was. When you say back to basics, line of scrimmage, right, on both sides of the ball, and I would say Everest kind of dominated that part of the ball, or that part of the game on Friday night. It was hard for the Warriors to get things going, and credit to DC Everest for playing solid on both sides of the ball, being able to rush the ball really well, which then allows you to kind of control the tempo of the game, and that's exactly what they did, and didn't give West opportunities to kind of flip that back over, other than the onside kick we were talking about coming out of the half. It was a nice opportunity, but one we just couldn't connect on. So,
and talking about basics, so often, again, there are certain parts of a game that indicate success, and one that I tend to sort of feel when I'm calling a game is the down and distance. And it felt like the whole night Everest was in short yardage. They would get 7 yards on first down. They would have a 3rd and 1. Warriors would have 2nd and 9, 3rd and 11. And in the high school game, I think it's even more important than at the college or pro levels to be able to get positive yards on every down and not be forced into those long yardage situations where a defense can basically pin their ears back.
Right. And how many of those situations too were they able to do that by running the ball? And that's a really tough situation for a defense. If you can't slow them down and they are less than 5 yards to get a first down on second down, like you said, they were very, very often. It's tough to slow them down. First drive, they had the big interception, and I thought that was maybe kind of stem the tide a little bit and flow, but they kind of to be 3-0 at halftime was pretty fortunate because it was Everest moved the ball, had a ton of yards in the first half, but not many points, and was there's a couple decisions made in the first half of going for it on fourth down, some different things that I thought were interesting decisions, but at the end of the day, it worked out for them, and 17-0 for the Evergreens.
Like DC Everest, Stevens Point is 2-0 in the conference, and the old rivalry game against Wisconsin Rapids. It was a fun night for those Panther fans because Stevens Point knocked off rebuilding Wisconsin Rapids team 56-0. So Spash 4-0, 2-0 in the conference. Rapids 0-4 and 0-2. Trent Breitbach was 6 of 11, 166 yards and a touchdown, 57 yards rushing and 3 scores. Johnny Ananitis. They come to Tom Field in just over a week. I'm going to have to work all next week to get that name right because he is somebody we talk about all the time. But Ananitis had 4 catches, 136 yards, and a touchdown. Spash, so far this season, 4 games, 196 points scored. 196, that's some easy math. 49 points per game, 7 touchdowns, 7 extra points. But Stevens Point doing what they're expected to do because we were talking again beforehand. Stevens Point's doing a lot of things right, but at the same time, they're going to be tested this week against Hudson, and I think they'll be tested more as the season goes on, but they're doing what they have to do, and they've been very impressive in doing so.
Right, you only can play against a team on your schedule for that week, and that's exactly what they've done. They've done a great job with it. But I think the picture becomes a little more clear this week of who they are because they'll have common opponent in Hudson with West, and we kind of know from watching them firsthand what type of team Hudson has this year. So, but at the end of the day, I mean, you look at Johnny's big playability, 4 catches, 136 yards is pretty darn impressive. I think one of the things against a matchup like Rapids, I had the opportunity to watch a little bit of this game on film, and I think Coach Krenz is trying to implement his offense, which is tough against a team like, well, many of their opponents this year. Tough defenses, good squads, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Back-to-back, Everest, Spash. I mean, when you talk
Rice,
about WBC,
Lake,
it doesn't get any easier than that, or harder than that, I should say. But ultimately, I think right now their style of play, too, is that they throw the ball a lot. And when you throw the ball a lot and you don't have a ton of success with it, that the clock doesn't move much. Your defense spends more time on the field, doesn't get a very good break from their between possessions of being on the field, and that can make for a tough and long night. But that's what you do. You don't completely change who and what you are or what you're trying to do on offense because of that, but it certainly could make for a long season for those guys.
Marshfield earned their first win of the season. They are 1-3 overall, 1-0 in the conference. They beat Eau Claire Memorial in a tight one, 27-18. Marshfield scored late to make the score actually a little larger than it was. Eau Claire Memorial still looking for their first win. Hayden Carlson had a big night for Marshfield, 19 rushes, 234 yards and a touchdown. Added 3 catches, 54 yards, and a big 91-yard kickoff return for a touchdown as well. Still 2 quarterbacks for Marshfield. Ethan Femmel, 6 of 13, 75 yards and a touchdown. Trevin Price had 6 of 11, 67 yards for Marshfield. 2 big rushing nights for Memorial. Mason Lauscher, 19 rushes, 154 yards. Cole Holzinger, 24 rushes, 135 yards and 2 touchdowns. Bottom line is Marshfield needed that one. That's a huge win for Marshfield. And Memorial, they needed that one too. So those are the games. I mean, we talk about all the time. You can talk about those games against undefeateds, but boy, those teams that are trying to find the momentum and still try to work their way to the playoffs, those are big games.
Yeah, and not having seen this one, the statistics kind of tell a really interesting story in this one. It looks like Memorial had a lot of success running the football with two different guys. I think that's interesting for Marshfield because I think one of the things traditionally they hang their hat on is their defense, and giving up that many yards rushing is a pretty big night for Eau Claire Memorial, as well as we kind of talked about Marshfield's struggle to score points. At 27 points is a good night, good output, but when you talk about one of those coming late and one of them being a 91-yard kick return, it kind of speaks to maybe their offense still isn't clicking on all cylinders, where I know a lot of other teams have put up a lot more points against Eau Claire Memorial this year.
And Eau Claire North gets a win, 1-3 in the conference, 0-1 because these crossovers are non-conference to the conference. But boy, they count for getting to the playoffs, so that's huge. They defeated Superior 30-21. Superior actually jumped out to a 14-0 lead and a 21-7 lead, but North came back to lead 23-21 at half, and then held Superior scoreless in the second half. But those crossover games, that's one of the things about the Valley. Those crossover games are vital. There's one crossover game every week.
Yep.
And for Eau Claire North, that gets them on the right side of the ledger.
Yeah, it really makes how you draw and who you draw in that crossover makes a big difference. So Claire North just finished up 2 years with Superior, so next year that one rotates and goes on, and we'll see what this means from a playoff standpoint. If you need that win to have any hope, if you're Eau Claire North, but at the very end, you're in week 4. To get that first win in week 4 makes a big difference as you go into week 5 practice. You go on the other side of that for Superior. You're now 0-4 going into week 5, and one of the chances you had that you thought when you circled the schedule at the beginning of the year is this is one you thought you had to have, and they didn't get it. So that's a tough spot for them to be in.
Great Northern Conference. Rhinelander went to Tom Field and knocked off Wausau East 28-14. Rhinelander 2-2, 1-1 in the GNC. Wausau East 1-3, 0-2 in the conference. East jumped out quickly. They forced turnovers on the first 2 drives and were able to convert. Led 14-0, but then Rhinelander pounded it. Cyrus Leisure, 15 rushes, 116 yards and a touchdown. Ben Olson, 3 catches, 63 yards and a score. Rhinelander, the first 2 years for East in the GNC has been a bit of an Achilles heel because the only conference win Rhinelander had last season came against East, and that's a tough one for the Jacks because to jump out ahead like that at home and to see it slip away and to fall 0-2. 1-1 and 0-2, big difference and a big win for Rhinelander.
Yeah, and especially we're going to talk about the rest of them here in a second, but coming out of this night, one of the things you look at and you say maybe this conference is up for grabs this year. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about each one, but at the end of the day, these games make a huge difference for first, second, and third place, and a good win for Rhinelander, and tough when you score the first 14 and then go on a 28-0 drought like that. So obviously the Lumberjacks look to bounce back this week.
Lakeland stays undefeated, one of those surprises. Lakeland is 4-0, 2-0 in the conference. Defeat Mosinee 24-20. Mosinee now 2-2, 1-1 in the league. Treve Stoffel continues to rack up the big numbers. He was 20 of 33 passing, 233 yards, a touchdown, 9 rushes, 98 yards and a score. It was 24-7 Lakeland at halftime. Mosinee scored a couple of touchdowns in the fourth quarter, but not able to come all the way back. But Lakeland continues to find ways to win. We saw them again in the scrimmage. I remember you thought they had some talent, and they're showing it.
Yeah, and to be 4-0, I know they've kind of flipped the script on the last few years here. I know that they've kind of strong in the non-conference, struggle with those teams in the conference that they've struggled with, and hope to beat those lesser teams down the stretch in order to make their way into the playoffs. And this year, starting off 4-0, it's a great start for them. And then you kind of look at the flip side with Mosinee. I mean, I think it makes for a really intriguing matchup this week with them in East. But the other thing you look at it when it comes to game planning for Lakeland or against Mosinee, I think you kind of know what basket you put your eggs in, right? You got to have 1 or 2 spies on Stoffel, who's just obviously a phenomenal leader and great player for them. But it looks like if you can shut Treve down, you got a pretty good shot.
Merrill beat Medford first time, and we're going to hear about this game with the Merrill head coach coming up in just a few minutes. But in a decade since Merrill had defeated Medford, and they defeated the Raiders 20-16 last week. So Merrill 2-2, 1-1 in the conference. Medford 1-3, 1-1 in the conference. Cole Rudai was 11 of 18, 182 yards and 3 touchdowns. Kanan Yankee 21 rushes, 89 yards. Keelan Allen 4 catches, 79 yards and a score. Noah Klug 11 tackles, and Merrill for 6 turnovers in that game. One of the things I asked the coach when he came in last night is, you forced 6 turnovers. How would you win by only 4 points? But it doesn't matter. 4 points is 4 points, and great effort for Merrill, especially on the defensive side of the football.
Yeah, 6 turnovers is incredible. And when 6 turnovers happen in a game, there's probably a piece of luck. There's probably some really good defense, and there's probably some evidence of maybe Medford being inexperienced and not having as many opportunity or not as much talent as they've had in the past. But, I mean, these are the types of wins for a program like Merrill and this group of kids for Merrill that they needed. I mean, what a huge punch in the arm. What a great thing for them to have now both Mosinee and Medford in their rearview mirror have a win against Medford for the first time in 10 years. Merrill's got to really like where they're sitting. Look forward to hearing what Coach has to say. And on top of it, I mean, we talk about all the time what's high school sports about. What is you want to win, obviously that's your goal, but it's about developing character and building strong relationships. Well, this group of kids from Merrill forever now will be able to talk about their senior year and beating the perennial powerhouse Medford, which not very many GNC Merrill Blue Jay graduates get to talk about, is beating a Medford team. So good for them, and a great memory created that night.
And Tomahawk still perfect as well, beating Antigo at Schofield Stadium 49-0. Rex Riley, 61 yards rushing, 8 tackles. Jonah Dickens, 3 catches, 77 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So Tomahawk just keeps on rolling. And again, to see Tomahawk and Lakeland both undefeated and top of the GNC, something we haven't seen in a while, if ever.
Yeah, I think you talk about Tomahawk having a tough squad, and year in and year out, you would say that at their best, Tomahawk has a really good season, and this is a super competitive game, and Tomahawk maybe sneaks one out or squeaks one out. But to beat them 49-0, I think I'm super interested to see how Tomahawk goes through the rest of this conference. When we talked to Coach Riley a few weeks ago, one of the things he talked about is having kind of a stable full of running backs and going with the hot hand. And as we look at the stats from week to week, this week their leading rusher was a different guy again. So it looks like they are using those different backs and going with the hot hand.
CWC large, and quite a matchup in Wittenberg last week. Stratford and Whitburn, two of the top performers in that league for a number of years now. And they, for the second time this season, Whitburn falls in overtime. Overtime has not been very kind to Wittenberg-Birnamwood. Stratford rallied late, win 16-13. Both teams now 2-2 overall. Stratford 2-0 in the conference. Whitburn 1-1. The Tigers tied the game with an 11-yard pass from Brady Berg to Connor Kreft with 1:42 left in the fourth quarter. And they missed the extra point, so they went to overtime, and then they won it on a 33-yard field goal by Declan Fisher in OT. Brady Berg did not hit a lot of passes, but boy, he hit the big one. He was 6 of 23 for 60 yards, 2 touchdowns. Colton Hopt had 10 rushes, 66 yards. Jagger Ormond, 11 tackles. Bo Davis for Whitburn was 6 of 11, 77 yards and a touchdown, also 47 yards rushing and a score. Oliver Fraser, 17 rushes, 60 yards. Has to be a sting for Whitburn to be up late and to see it kind of slip away. And those overtime games, those get old quickly when they lose back-to-back early in the season.
Yeah, they're tough. And high school football overtime is so different than it is at any of the other levels. College, a little similar to college, but pretty different at the same time. And the NFL, so it's not something you spend a lot of time doing and preparing for, that overtime period. So it's a tricky situation to be in, even trickier situation to be successful in. And this is one, if there is a silver lining for this for Whitburn, I think when they become a playoff team, because when you look at that schedule, they are going to be, I think they're going to be able to reflect back on these games and knowing how that sectional sometimes plays out, that while they lost these games, these are probably really good learning experiences for them, and if they continue to build off them, I think Wittenberg's going to be just fine. And when you talk about Stratford, that's a huge win, right? I mean, they stubbed their toes week 1 and week 2. I would imagine both within the team and in that community, there's been a lot of question marks. Is what's going on, and the sky is falling, a lot of that sort of thing. So probably really good for Stratford to be able to pull that one out and maybe build off of this victory as they head for that eventual matchup against Amherst.
And Amherst is looking very good. 4-0, 2-0 in the conference. They beat Marathon 44-7 last week. Marathon 1-3, 0-2 in the league. Aiden Nairdahl, he's a junior. He's a running back. He had some big plays. He had a 65-yard touchdown run on the third play from scrimmage, a 61-yard touchdown run on the third play of the second drive. Added a 78-yard touchdown run with under 20 seconds left in the half. Had another run, because I was kind of looking at the tape of this one, of more than 40 yards in the first half. I have not been able to find any final numbers, but I know with those kind of runs in the first half, he had a lot of yards. 25-yard touchdown pass from True Thurs to Garrett Bracewell in the first play of the second quarter made it 15-7, but Amherst would respond with a Michael Godowski touchdown run, and they went on to score the final 29 points of the game. Nairdahl 4 TDs on the ground, but Amherst has been very impressive early.
Yeah, and to be able to rip these big plays off, running the football like that, obviously that's the type of stuff that both conference championships and deep playoff runs are made of. And Marathon Marathon's been a decent team, right? I mean, 1-3 doesn't show it, but definitely a much improved team from last year. They seem to be healthy. So I think this is kind of a statement win for Amherst. Not that Marathon's in the top of that conference by any means, but I think Amherst is kind of sending a message right now that they're not messing around, and maybe they're back to being number one.
Loyal Greenwood undefeated. And again, I mean, we see a number of teams in central Wisconsin that have struggled. When you look at teams like Tomahawk and Lakeland, and here Loyal Greenwood 4-0, 2-0 in the conference, shutting down Colby 32-6. Colby, after winning their opener, have lost 3 games in a row. They're 0-2 in the conference. Jake Lindner, 12 rushes, 139 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Luke Hanula, Colby, 21 rushes, 95 yards, and a score. But Loyal Greenwood, they're going to be tested. They got still have what you call the beast of that conference coming up. But boy, they have put themselves in a nice spot.
Oh, for sure. I mean, when from a preseason, from a confidence standpoint, I mean, I guess where else could you possibly be at this point? And I think they've definitely made the case that we're going to watch the rest of these games and not be surprised when they have success on both sides of the football. So great start for Loyal Greenwood. Continued tough road for Colby, it appears. Maybe taken a step backwards this year, but it's going to kind of be interesting to see these matchups with Loyal Greenwood and how other teams prepare for them down the stretch.
In fact, Amherst visits Loyal this week, so that we'll find out a lot more about them. That's but one of the things that's really cool is I don't imagine that they've had this kind of game there in a while, where a team like Amherst that's perennially a conference stalwart comes in, and that's what you love to see.
Some enthusiasm for it.
Be a Friday night where there's a lot of energy, I imagine. And I've been to Loyal and done games in Loyal back when they were in the Cloverwood with Newman. It's different than what Amherst usually deals with.
Well, and I also think that we talk all the time about perennially there's teams who are at the top of these conferences. Teams are looking to knock them off, but also within these conferences, you're looking from going from the middle 3 to the top 3, from the bottom 3 to the middle 3, or whatever the case may be. I think this is the type of thing for Loyal. This is a measuring stick, right? We talk about that. Obviously, Vegas, we know where the money's probably going to be this week, but they come out of this game healthy. Amherst is now in your rearview mirror, and some of those other matchups might look pretty good.
And then finally, Weyauwega Fremont, now 3-1 overall, 1-1 in the conference. They bounced back from their first loss, that tough one at Wittenberg a couple of weeks ago. They went to Spencer Columbus and won 29-15. Spencer Columbus now 1-3, 0-2. Carter Berdishaw from Weyauwega was 20 of 31, 146 yards and a score. Bryce Magdens had 9 catches, 73 yards and a touchdown. Weyauwega is a little interesting because you look at the wins they've had. They've all been really good numbers. Their quarterback had some poor numbers against Wittenberg-Bernewood, a good football team. I think a lot of what we're talking about here, there's not a lot of consistency so far, has there?
Right, and I think, Weyauwega is the one who looked to be trending over the last couple years to be heading in that direction. And I was kind of surprised with the Wittenberg score last week because they definitely had a rough one. Good to see him bounce back. And I feel like Spencer Columbus, 1-3, 0-2, has also showed some signs of life this year. They've been much more competitive than they were last year, so certainly something they can hang their hat on as well.
Yeah, they were tied at Stratford 2 weeks ago at halftime, and they've played much better football so far this season as well. We'll get more of the results from last week a little bit later in the program, but coming up again at 7:06. It will be Corbin Enzenroth, the DC Everest senior running back, as our student-athlete guest. But coming up next, we'll have our coach guest, Jason Wadzinski, the head football coach of Merrill. That is coming up. It is the Big High School Sports Show here on 98.9 WXCO. On Friday night, the Wausau West High School football team plays host to Wisconsin Rapids in a Wisconsin Valley Conference matchup. Hear all the exciting action live on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app, starting with the pregame show at 6:35 and the opening kickoff at 7 p.m. Wausau West football on 98.9 WXCO is brought to you by Sun Printing, the Wausau West Athletic Department, Wisconsin Valley Flag Football, Featherstone Cabinetry, the Wausau West Gridiron Club, and K5 Construction. It's Wausau West taking on Wisconsin Rapids in high school football. Friday night, starting with the pregame show at 6:35 and the opening kickoff at 7 on Wausau's only radio home for high school play-by-play. 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. And welcome back. It is the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. I am Chad Holmes. Jason Foster will rejoin us in just a little bit, but time now for our coach guest for this week. And we're very happy to welcome back to the program. And I think we had you on twice last year. Am I mistaken, or am I I had you on early in the season. Didn't we have you back at the end of the season as well?
Yeah, I think it was kind of a wraparound deal, early and late.
So early and late, but very happy to welcome Jason Wadzinski, the head coach of the Merrill Blue Jays, back to the program. The coach, great to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. This time around, we had you at the beginning and the end. We came right in the middle.
There we go.
With week 5, so we're going to get you all around it here. But wanted to talk to you after a great win. Let's start off with last week, because we'll talk about the season, your players, and the like. But last week to be at home against the Medford Raiders, a team that has been fairly dominant in the Great Northern Conference. It's a different Medford team but every year, but at the same time, always well coached, always going to be a good football team. And to earn a big W on a Friday night at Jay Stadium had to be a significant win for your group.
It's huge. It's huge for the program. I think the last time, on my records looking at it, that Merrill beat Medford was 2015. I mean, that's just a long stretch of being kind of dominated one way by a single program. So for us to get that win there on Friday night, that's just it pays dividends to our boys and what they're doing and the work they're putting in.
Talking to you beforehand, you said you forced turnovers, and boy, that's such a key in any football game. And to force a good football team to cough it up 6 times. What was it on the defensive side that caused so many issues for the Medford Raiders?
Hard to say. I mean, you can throw a lot of things at Ted Wilson, and he's going to have counters and things that will work then that he'll throw back at you. It's kind of like a chess match out there, and it's really tough to go against that guy. He's been doing it for a long time, and he's very good at it. Mm-hmm. The plan that we did put into place this past week was kind of nuts. I was talking with my my special teams coordinator going into the week, and when we met that Sunday evening to kind of game plan for the week before that Monday practice, I said, let's run a 7 front. Medford's going to pack it in. They're gonna run the ball. They have their overload look. They have their T-form look. They have all the things that they like to do. They have their double flex. Let's just put man on man across their front 7 and let our linebackers kind of roam free without having those big guys getting up to them, and let's see what we can do. I haven't seen anybody do it to them on film, maybe ever, which made it all the more crazy because you are very vulnerable on the back end of that. If they can get a pass or 2 off, you can be hurting when you only have 2 or 3 guys back in coverage and they're sending 4. But we felt pretty confident that we could get to the QB and force him into some tough situations. And our boys just did such a great job of gang tackling and second, third guys in after the wrap-up going for that ball and punching it out. And just so proud of their effort.
One of the names that popped up on the stat sheet was Noah Klug. Double-digit tackles, and in fact, for the season, I mean, I was thinking as I was, getting ready to talk to you and looking at some of the numbers that there's a pretty good chance when you're on defense, he's going to be the guy around the football, just based on what we've seen so far. What did he do so well last week, and what's he done well generally this season?
Noah's just a gamer. I mean, he has been for a number of years now. He's finally at his senior year, so that definitely played into our thinking with the game plan. If we can keep extra guys off of Noah and let him roam and make some tackles and make some plays, we knew we had a good shot. But also shout out to Ben Gruitt, just our one of our cornerbacks who we kind of flipped back and forth from corner to safety. The guy had 2 picks, I think, on Friday night, and he also had, I believe, 2 fumble recoveries. So he was just all around the action. It was just an awesome individual effort.
Talking generally about the first 4 games, it's been, it's only been less than a month, but it looks like it's been a little bit of a roller coaster. There's been some pretty good highs. There's probably been a couple of lows. Start with the non-conference games, because I was talking beforehand, and Osceola, who's a good football program, came to Merrill for the opening night. It was a tough first half, and you lost 35-13, and then you went on the bus ride to Crandon, and you were down at halftime, had not scored a point, and then scored 30 points in the second half to come back and win. There was a lot in those first 2 games to either make you, hey, got something here, or to say, whoa, there's something. I mean, there were some big ups and downs those first 2 games, weren't there?
There was, definitely. And when we come off a season like we had last year, where we qualified for the playoffs and we had some very good, strong senior leadership, what ends up happening is you get guys that graduate and move on, and you're left with a lot of holes to fill. Now, luckily, this season, as opposed to a couple years ago, when we had to fill those holes from all those departures, we had seniors that had worked hard for 4 years that are now stepping into those roles. I think we have 16 or 17 seniors out. So when you have seniors replacing seniors, that makes a big difference. With the caveat of that, though, just because they're seniors doesn't mean they have a lot of varsity Friday night experience, because those previous guys got the majority of the workload. So when you start a season against a tough non-con team like Osceola, on paper you're feeling pretty good about things until you see the live action. And I think guys that don't necessarily see those Friday night lights and the speed of the game, it's a learning curve. And yes, they're strong, they've worked hard, and they've earned those spots. But until you actually get in there, and we only had basically 3 returning starters, they're going to take some lumps for a little bit while they get up to speed.
What happened in the second half then at Crandon? Because you fell in the opener, you're down, you're being shut out in the second game, and then all of a sudden you get 30 points in the second half. What happened? What switch turned on for your group in the final 2 quarters up in Crandon?
Well, there were some discussions at halftime. We'll say that. Maybe some motivating discussions that. Just try to get our boys a little jacked up here to go.
You went into your toolbox, right?
We went into the toolbox a little bit, and I'm not going to take much of the credit, because what I ultimately did was we talked through the game plan at Crandon. The game plan was solid. We had really, in the first half, we didn't have much success offensively, but defensively they had 2 touchdowns in the first half. I believe it was 14-0, and both touchdowns were missed tackles and 1 blown assignment. I mean, other than that, we had really held them to hardly any yards, any positive yards, except for 2 plays. So the message is, the game plan is solid. Go out, play fast, stop thinking so much, and enjoy the game. Now, we had the benefit of beginning the third quarter of that game with one of our young bucks, the sophomore Peyton Zimmerman. He ran the kickoff back. So if there's a momentum shifter in a game, if you can open a second half with a kick return, that's one way to light your hair on fire for a whole team.
And then Mosinee, and I kind of group Mosinee and Medford. You have not the easiest way to start your conference campaign.
Never.
But you went to Mosinee, 21-14. That's not been an easy trip over the years. I mean, it usually has been a pretty one-sided affair. Your team had a good chance in that football game. What did that game tell you about your group?
It told me that our group is a resilient bunch, and when they play to the ability level that they have, we can play with anybody in this conference. Mosinee is always going to be a quality program. As long as Staffel's at the helm, he does a nice job getting those guys ready and prepared. His kid is an absolute stud on both sides of the ball, at QB and at safety.
Yeah.
So the game plan, it focused a lot about bringing pressure on him, trying to force him into some bad decisions, which is a rarity with that young man. He unfortunately made a couple more plays than us with his feet, on both offense and then on defense to ice the game with an interception. But I'm incredibly proud of the effort that our boys put in and going kind of blow to blow with Mosinee there in the conference opener.
Again, we're talking to Jason Wadzinski, the head football coach of Merrill High School, here on the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. We'll continue talking about some of the guys on your squad and your schedule coming up and your team. Let's step back and talk about the program, something we talked about last year, because it has been a process. And it seems as though with this program, for you and the folks that work with you at Merrill High School, there have been always strides forward. They may not have always been the biggest strides forward, but there always seems like there's been strides forward. Is that the way you feel continuing into 2025, that this program is continuing to take the strides forward to move from where you were, where it was a struggle, to a playoff squad, to competing in the Great Northern Conference? Do you think that those strides are continuing this year?
I do. And I think first and foremost, it starts with numbers. You know, it's hard to play high school football without numbers, especially when your senior classes are the leaders. If you can hover around that 15 senior mark in our conference, in our division, I think that's a good number to strive for. If you can hit 20, that's great. But you look around the conference, and there's a lot of teams that are having difficulties getting guys out. We've been fortunate enough that I think as a staff, I think our assistant coaches do a great job of keeping kids out and keeping kids enjoying the game so that the numbers stay up and we maybe pull a few more in every year. It really starts with numbers. And then once you have those numbers, it starts with the work ethic in the off season. I'll say of the kind of 70 guys that we were tracking in grades 10 through 12, not all of those guys ended up coming out, but we start with a baseline number in the spring of guys that either have come out or we're kind of targeting and we're hoping that they'll join us. They maybe talked about it or had interest in joining. Of those 70, we've had about half, so about 35 that hit at least 50% weight room attendance every day, and that's huge. So getting guys out and then building that camaraderie in the weight room in the off season, having them work together, you know, that's what sets programs to the next level and continues that growth and that success.
What about even at the lower levels? Do you sense more excitement for younger kids to be involved, to start that process towards getting on the field at Jay Stadium as a high school player?
I do. And we made some changes this year with our Parks and Rec program in Merrill, and we've moved the site. So the flag football games even are now played at the Merrill High School at the Jay Stadium. We divided up the field into chunks so that we can play games there so that they get a feel for it. And it's just all those little things that you can do as a program in the community to try to build the excitement for the game and the love for the game to keep these kids coming out and wanting more.
Let's talk about some of the guys on your squad. And you said it, a lot of new names this year, and providing production and filling up those stat sheets. All right, let's start on the offensive side here. You have quarterback Cole Rudy. Is that pronounced?
Rudi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure I got that right,
because
he's done it both with the arm and the leg so far. Tell us a little bit about him.
Cole Rudi he's a very talented young man, and as a junior, I think there are times when he overthinks things, and we have to kind of get him grounded. But man, he's turning into something special, and he makes the right choices, he makes the right reads, and he just plays hard. He plays fast. He's a coachable kid. I had the pleasure of not only coaching him but teaching him when he was in middle school as an 8th grader, so I got to know him a little bit then, and I'm just really proud of him in the maturing and the young man he's becoming. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun couple of years.
Do you see that in 8th grade? Because, you know, when you see kids at that level, do you have a sense that there's a kid that has really good potential? I think I can see him becoming a player. And how often, and I actually asked this of another coach recently, how often is there a kid in the middle schools that just comes out of nowhere? Because kids develop at different rates and in different ways. But I guess starting with Cole, your thoughts as him as an 8th grader, and then generally, when you see 8th graders, how many times are you surprised?
Well, I feel like in terms of athletic ability, I'm surprised more often than I'm not, because what I see more than usual is if we have an athlete that's an absolute stud in 7th and 8th grade, it usually means that they matured faster and just physically they're more dominant, because it's such a fluctuation in middle school. Mm-hmm. You know, you have such a discrepancy between some athletes and how fast they've grown and their maturity level. So sometimes what I'll see is those guys that are absolute animals in middle school. If they don't develop that same work ethic, then they sometimes struggle in the high school level because they're not used to having to work so hard for it. They didn't develop some of the skills and some of the work ethic that they needed to because they just were gifted and they could do it at that level.
Mhm.
So when you talk middle school, if I'm able to identify anybody that could become a player, a lot of times it's more so the kid's personality. Like you can tell which kids, other students around them, his peers, they gravitate towards. Those are leaders. And then when they're interested in sports and they have that athletic ability, that stuff comes at different rates. But that that need to pull in your peers and follow, you can tell which kids follow others.
A junior quarterback, I imagine when you see these sparks early on, is exciting because as a quarterback, you do sometimes have to learn the hard way, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah. And you know what? He's a kid that is a tremendous athlete, and I know he's chomping at the bit and wants to play more on the defensive side of the ball. He started the season playing two ways for a while, and then we realized that especially his junior year, having the ability to have those conversations. When the defense is out on the field, it's kind of crucial and imperative for his development. So he'll get there. But
and you got another junior as a running back in Keenan Yankee, leading running back. I mean, again, to have your leading passer, your quarterback, who's your second leading rusher, and then your leading ball carrier, also a junior. Talk a little bit about him.
Also a junior, yeah. Yankee's got great vision. So in our zone blocking scheme, you need a guy that is patient. You can't. This isn't power football anymore. It's not line up and run blast behind a fullback or pull a guard and run through a hole. It's we're taking our zone steps. We might bring a split over and kick out the end. But what needs to happen then is that back he needs to be patient. He needs to take his proper footwork and his proper aiming point. And then when that hole develops, that's when he pops and gets through it. And Yankee does a phenomenal job of that. He has some good finesse. He's a hard kid to hit square. Like he never takes like the big hit, the big shot because he's so slippery. It's hard to get a good pop on him.
A kid that you do have back from a year ago is out on the wide receiver side, and I was watching the highlights of your game against Crandon. I think it was on Channel 12 that night. And there was a catch that Allen made that was pretty amazing. And he's a big play kid, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. I think the one you're probably talking about is the late in the game. It was a 3rd and long. We're backed up pretty good inside our own 20, and Cole hit him on a post, just a laser, and it was I think a one-handed grab,
Yep.
and he ended up going all the way for 80 plus, and that's what he does. He's a big play kid. The goal is always to move him around, motion him, line him up at X and Z out wide, put him at tight end, put him at H, which is basically our wing back. Just try to get him in space, and sometimes it's a matter of what can we do to get Keelan Allen the ball, because he does great things with it once he has it.
Those are guys that fill the stat sheet, and I sometimes feel bad because I do a game and I have my big stat sheet, and I don't have a stat sheet for the linemen.
Absolutely.
But that's not right. You don't have the big numbers for these other guys without your linemen.
Not at all.
What about your line? Who jumps out up front?
Our line is just it's solid. It's developed so nicely over the last couple of years. So guys that we have coming back, Mason Block, a two-way guy, offense and defense, and you got Josh Gustum. 6'8", 300 pounds. I mean, he's just an animal. He's a road grader. We can run to his side when we know we need some yards. And then you have other guys that have stepped up and started for their first time. You got Jace Steinigel at center, and he's done a phenomenal job. I mean, when we initially switched to that pistol offense, I mean, there was a learning curve, and it's we hear all the time, like, coach, get under center, we only need a yard, stuff like that, and like I get it, but I think what sometimes we struggle as the fans on the outside seeing is if we're gonna rep under center, that's minutes during practice, it's a lot of time that we have to put in. So We have things that we do in short yardage out of pistol still, and I'm kind of going around here on that. But the reason I ended up down that track is because Jay Steinagel has not had a muff snap. He hasn't had a bad snap, and since Crandon, the last 2 games, he's been flawless, and I'm just super impressed. Max Kuhn, he's out there now on the left guard side, and he's a senior that stepped in and started for his first time. And he had a little bit of a rocky start too, but that was, I think, a lot of the learning curve of the Friday night speed. Another junior out there who gets a lot of playing time, Jaden Vandernest. Just it's some good quality guys that work their butt off, and I love shouting out every one of them because, like you said, they don't show up in the stat sheet,
Right.
And they don't get the recognition they deserve. You alluded to having the excitement of having a junior quarterback and a junior running back this year, which is great, but we also have 4 senior linemen. So, I mean,
the odds are if you had if you had 4 juniors and a sophomore lineman, those juniors in the backfield aren't looking as good, are
You're
they?
absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. So now it's going to be a matter of who's stepping up next year, because those 5 spots are more important than any on the football field.
Again, we're talking to Jason Wadzinski, the Merrill High School head football coach, here on the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. Talked a little bit about Noah Klug and Ben Gruitt on the defensive side. Anybody else defensively that's been a key to early success?
Yeah, Hunter Opper and Peyton Hagenbusher on the end. So Hunter Opper is, again, he's a senior, first year starting though, really. He did a little bit for us last year at linebacker, and Hunter also gets some looks at tight end and whatnot. But, man, so much of what I plan in the day-to-day around the football is Hunter Opper and what we're going to do, how we're going to position him, and he'll line up at D end. I'll bring him down inside to the interior line. There'll be times when I drop him back all the way to safety. We ended up running a goofy play that we kind of drew up on the fly and against Mosinee in the second half that seemed to work, where we were trying to disguise some stuff and bring some stunts off the edge, and then we dropped him all the way back to safety, and it worked, and it was successful. And you can't do that, though, unless you got a guy like Hunter Opper. Peyton Hagenbusher, who he's a junior this year, he is not somebody, and I'm going to be honest, when we're looking at names in the offseason and things like that, like, he's not somebody that I had put a star on, underlined, bolded, however you want to say. Like, he came out of the woodwork kind of for me, and every now and then you get those pleasant surprises every year, and he has just been an absolute wrecking ball on the other side. He's been hard to block. He's drawn a lot of holding penalties this year. He's a tough kid out there on the edge.
Look at the conference, because I think your 2 games in the conference so far may be a microcosm of where this league is. You have Lakeland and Tomahawk both 4-0 overall, 2-0 in the conference, but you look at Lakeland had to come from behind to win at Rhinelander. They had a 4-point game against Mosinee. You have Tomahawk, who needed 2 safeties to win by 1 against East, and you look at basically this conference, and I was looking at your schedule. It's a schedule where you could conceivably win all your games, you could conceivably lose all your games, and I think it's pretty much that way for all the teams in the GNC right now. It looks like a conference that I certainly wouldn't want to be making bets on games in the Great Northern Conference.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, I've done this at a varsity level as an assistant for, 11 years, and now this is, I think, the 5th year as the head coach. I can't think of any team that I've coached for in any conference that I've been in where I don't know what to expect when I look at scores Friday night after a game. Things that I thought would happen are not happening. Teams that I thought might be up seem to be down. Teams that I thought are down are up. It's absolute chaos, and I'm going to be honest, I'm here for it. Like, I'm loving it. Not just because we took down Medford and almost took down Mosinee, but it's anyone's game at this point. It truly is. When you got 2 undefeated conference teams up at the top and they're both still on the schedule in front of us, that's a great feeling. Knowing that you have a shot to control it, it's going to be fun. It's a wild ride this year.
Well, this week it's Anago, and while Anago struggled it's always that rivalry game. And
Yeah.
there's probably no game they want to win more than Merrill, that 64 game. Anago Red Robins, what are you seeing as you prepare for them this week?
So we got a few films on Anago, and the one we have on them was their game against Medford prior to us playing Medford. And the point I'm making to the guys is, when you watch that film, Anago moved the ball on Medford. They had a lot of self-inflicted mistakes. There were a lot of false starts. There were a lot of penalties, offensively and defensively, that put them in a position to not win that game. And then Medford made a couple big plays, and then you know how things go, and it snowballs from there. So I think it ended up being 50-something to like 18 with Medford and Anago, but that score was not really reflective of how the game went. So when we're preparing for a team like that, I need the boys to understand that, yes, Medford kind of took it to Anago pretty good, and yes, we were able to best Medford last Friday night, but that doesn't mean anything. And if you want proof of that, look at the rest of the conference,
Right.
because that's why you play the game, you know? And with these rivalry games, I'm sorry, but it seems like it does not matter who's better than who on paper, who has a better record going into it. It's a crapshoot when it comes to these, you know? And since I've been around in Merrill, it's been in every other year. It's actually been every year the away team has won since I've been in Merrill. So we're hoping to end that streak this year and get back right. And there's a nice traveling trophy, a Warren 64 road sign. It's pretty nice. The both tech ed departments for Anago and Merrill contributed and worked together on building it, and we'd love to house that and keep it one more year.
And I guess my final question is, as you go to the second half of the season, what is the area that your team has to be better at in order to gain the success that you would like in the final 5 games of the regular season, hopefully even more after that?
Yeah. And I think it's the piece that we've put together the last couple weeks is that starting faster. And we really struggled the first 2 games with starting fast. Osceola, we weren't able to overcome that. Against Crandon, we were, because we had a big play to kind of spark us in that second half. Mosinee, I feel like we started fast. Medford, we started fast. We're a team that can play a full 4 quarters, and I know we're going to finish strong because we've proven that we will finish strong and that they have that grit in them to do it. But to beat those quality teams, just because you finish strong doesn't mean you're going to win that game. We gotta put some quality football out there in the first quarter as well.
Coach Jason Wadzinski, I'm actually looking forward to coming up to Jay Stadium in a couple of weeks when you play Wausau East. So look, hopefully you can squeeze me in somewhere in that beautiful booth, because it's a beautiful venue. That's
Saturday, October 4th.
Homecoming, right?
Yep, you bet.
So absolutely look forward to that. But best of luck against the Red Robins Thursday night. So again, early start this week, but always appreciate you coming on by.
Thanks, Chad. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're going to take a time out, come back with more. It is the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. And welcome back. It is hour number 2 of the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO. I'm Chad Holmes along with Jason Foster, and we got 28 minutes without you with Coach Wadzinski from Merrill. So
yeah, you got a little long-winded when I wasn't there. That's what I took away from that.
I had so many questions to ask, but now for our second guest here tonight, DC Everest running back senior Corbin Enzenroth. Corbin, thank you for coming on over.
Yeah.
And we'll get you a little closer to that microphone.
Oh, right.
There you go. But glad you could be over here. Congratulations on the last couple of weeks. Obviously, as a running back, to have 400 yards rushing over 2 weeks is a big accomplishment. Let's talk about the season so far. DC Everest coming off such a wonderful run last year to the state semifinals. Came in with changes. He had some real significant players that graduated. You move into a new role. How has it been for you coming into the running back position, becoming from the outside, it looks like the kind of the bell cow for the Evergreens. How has the season gone for you personally? Has it been an adjustment to become a guy getting the football 35 times in a game like we saw last week?
Yeah, it definitely has. The first 2 weeks we weren't too hot, but after those 2 weeks, I think since then we've all been like together, just playing good and solid. Even like with scout team, like everyone just stepped up, and proud of the guys. Been doing good.
So DC Everest, Chad touched on a little bit, is kind of about tradition, right? And we had Coach on a couple times last year, and we had Bankston on, we had the different players on.
Xavier this year.
Yep, Xavier already this year. We kind of talked about how last year was kind of a new tradition, right? New coach. And, I mean, Everest, you're still Everest football, and you're trying to accomplish. You guys had a phenomenal season. So stepping into that running back position after the year that Bankston had last year, those are big shoes to fill. And when you start the year 0-2, and I know you have somebody, Xavier, a huge play guy, and coming back, and a lot of guys focusing on him, the way you right the ship in high school football, if you start to struggle a little bit, is by running the football. And you guys have obviously done that, and done that very, very well the last 2 weeks. Tell me about what that process has been like, going through those first 2 weeks rough, but the number of carries you had, and kind of what your role is, and what it means to be the guy at at DC Everest.
Yeah, I knew over the summer, I was told by numerous people I had big shoes to fill. So I worked hard. We all worked hard. And we came in, and we thought it was going to be like more of a pass heavy. I heard that a lot. And then, we got like Xavier's doubled every game. It opens up the box. We got more room to run. And then from there, it just went with the flow. And then, like, we saw at West, like, 35, 37, whatever it was, rushes. Yeah, we kind of just whatever works.
37 rushes. That's a heavy workload.
I think the other piece of that, too, right? The injury at quarterback, you know what I mean? Probably took the pass heavy part of it down even a little bit more. So kind of increased your role a little bit, and you've obviously done a great job with that.
What was the maybe some of the keys? It's not just you. You did a lot of heavy lifting yourself the last 2 weeks. What has been the keys in order for you to get the two back-to-back, 175, I think, against Wisconsin Rapids, and then 237 against Wausau West? What have been the keys to the success for you and the run game generally for DC Everest?
It's been the O-line for sure. And Coach Mitchell plays a role, switching up all the runs each week and stuff. But the O-line has been doing really good.
Who are some of the kids on the offensive front for your team? Who are the ones that you get behind and hey, I'm going to have some room to run?
Carson Zesh and Will White. Yep. And Chris Ferrario.
Yeah, the young guy.
Yeah.
The young guy. In terms of, has there been a change in mentality after the first 2 weeks? Did you have a sense that, we're going to make a few adjustments, maybe find out some different ways to, for lack of a better term, skin the cat?
Yeah, we were definitely really hungry. We wanted, especially coming into conference. We knew we had to step it up, and we had to focus each day. And after those 2 losses, I think, like a lot of us, especially like a senior-heavy team, we weren't very happy with that. So we kind of used our leadership, and we all stepped up.
Yeah, talk a little bit more about your leadership, because you guys, I know, had best season DC Everest has had in a long time last year, made it one game away from going to state. A lot of those key players were gone. Several key players are back as well. What was the offseason like? Like, what was the focus having made such a nice deep run last year? What was the mindset this offseason from a leadership standpoint? I know you guys worked hard in the weight room and all that stuff, but what were some of the things you guys did off the field to kind of make sure you carried that forward this year?
So we actually have a leadership council, and we all get together. We got together before lifting in the summer, and there's I forgot what it's called, but there's a leadership manual, and it's a chapter and then a page. So we all got together, discuss how we're going to use that in real life, all that kind of stuff.
When did you start playing football? How old were you?
Pretty young. Flag football, elementary school.
I asked because you may not know this, but I started and played some football at Everest flag football. And it was a great program back long time ago. What was it about football that got you hooked? Because we talked to kids who come in and so often they get hooked early. Was there anything particular about the game of football that hooked you quickly?
Not really. It was actually wrestling for me. So, yeah, and then fractured my back a couple times, so I called it quits on wrestling. But I always found football fun, recess, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I always found it fun, but it was wrestling for me.
When you were a middle school and junior high player for DC Everest, who were some of the guys who were on that varsity team that you kind of looked up to and thought that's what I want to be when I get there?
The number one guy was probably Caden Bankston and Preston Miller. Those two I'd have to say.
Do you use anything that you did on the wrestling mat on the football field? Because sometimes we'll talk to offensive linemen. I think that sometimes we've had guys that have been wrestlers who are able to use it, either offensive or defensive linemen that can use some of the techniques. Are you, as a running back, able to use anything, or is it too different?
I think staying low helped me. Like you're in a wrestling match, you're down,
Right.
Like that. I think staying low and in that stance just kind of helped me.
What other sports do you play now other than football?
I run track.
And sprinter?
Yep, short sprinter.
Well, again, we're talking to Corbin Enzenroth, DC Everest High School senior, member of the Evergreen football team here on the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. When we were talking before we went on the air, you mentioned that you had a hamstring tear last year at the end of indoor track. As a running back, as a sprinter, is it hard to come back from that? Do you still think about that? Because injuries are often part of the game, and sometimes bouncing back from injuries can be very difficult. Was there any issue both physically and also mentally in terms of going 100% without the fear of maybe re-injuring yourself?
Yeah. I had PT throughout all summer, so I did what I could, but the first couple weeks of football, I had to wear a sleeve and stuff, and I could definitely still feel it, but it kind of just went away. I got to get stretched out. I got to get my hamstring stretched out some practices, but other than that, it's fine.
Is there a lot of guys, when you say you run track and football, is there a lot of crossover? A lot of guys play both, and what does that you think help make both of those teams better with a lot of guys playing both those sports?
Yeah, I think so. That's kind of the reason I joined track, and then I was decent at it. So I think a couple of us all joined track because of that.
Stepping away from sports for a few moments, what's your favorite class in school?
Sports and history, Mr. Hansen. It's pretty good.
That sounds like a class.
Yeah,
I wish I had.
Tell me a little bit more about that. What do you guys study in there?
It's basically just the history of sports. So far we learned Malice at the Palace. You guys know?
Yeah.
We watched. There's a documentary on Netflix that we watched first week of school. It was pretty fun. And then now we are learning about sports and civil rights. So I just had to do a presentation today, actually.
What'd you present on?
So you had to pick a person and an event. So I picked Jim Brown and his helping out in the community and the movements he started. And then I picked the banning of the Confederate flag in NASCAR.
Interesting.
With Bubba Wallace.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I wish that class was when I was back in school. That sounds like a very interesting class. When you're away from school, when you're away from sports, what do you do to get away from it all? Is there anything in particular that you enjoy that maybe outside the sports realm and outside the school realm that, hey, this is something I really like to do just for fun?
Yeah, I really like hunting and fishing.
What kind of, are you a gun deer hunter or something like that? Or
Gun and bow. I just went up last weekend for opener, but it was so hot.
I say pretty warm. I don't think this weekend's going to be much better.
No.
When we talk football, you've talked a lot about your friends and crossover and stuff like that. We spend a lot of time on this show talking about offensive stats and that sort of thing. You guys pitched a shutout last week. Tell me a little bit about defense, not necessarily X's and O's, but who are the guys on your defense? Like, what is the other half of DC Everest football?
Well, I would say a good leader, probably one of the best, is Brad Rickert. And he's stepped up a lot. Some of the other ones, Carson Kempf, he's a big one. I grew up wrestling with him. So
What is the attitude of your defense this year? Is it they fast? Are they tough? Hard hitting? What do they hang their hat on? What gets them fired up?
they're kind of mean.
Mean.
Yeah,
All right.
they're kind of mean at practice.
All right, you probably get to experience that firsthand.
Yeah.
what kind of coach is Coach Mitchell? We've enjoyed having him on the show last season, and it's really interesting to see a younger coach come to DC Everest with all the tradition it has, and for him to make such an immediate impact. You were a junior last season as he took over the head coaching position. How would you describe him and the process that he was able to implement both for the success last season and here this season as well?
I would say he's calm and collective, and he gets on us when it needs to be, but all of us, everyone on offense, trusts him. Like, whatever call he plays, no one's going to second-guess it. We all have faith in him. So.
Do you consider his offense fun? A fun offense for a player?
Yeah, I would say. I like it.
Kind of jumping back and forth a little bit, what are you looking to do after high school?
Not quite sure yet. I don't know if I want to take the football route yet or focus on my academics. But
continue.
I'm
sorry. Well, let me jump in real fast,
right.
Because then you can continue as well. It's always interesting talking to student athletes who are in that position where they have maybe the opportunity to continue the athletic aspect of it. With maybe the last couple of weeks, it could have changed. Do you hear from coaches after a game like you had Friday night at the college level? What kind of contact have you had with maybe folks at the college level at this point?
I had some contact earlier this year. Before the game after the game on Friday, actually, a Marine recruiter came up to me, gave me a shirt and shook my hand. So.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
If you were to continue, and let me ask, because this year is different for you being the guy for getting the football. Was playing college football something that was on your mind before this year, or now that you are getting the opportunity to show your worth, is that something that is maybe changing your perspective for the future?
Yeah, before the season, I wasn't leaning towards college football. I've thought about it more, but I'm kind of on the fence right now about if I want to play or not.
You said before, concentrate more on your studies. What area of study are you interested in, or what are you thinking as a career after high school and potentially football? What do you want to get into?
Finance. One thing I'd like to do is real estate. I think that'd be fun.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Is there anybody in your life that's been involved in that maybe got your interest in it? Do you have family or friends that you've seen in finance, or is this something that just came to you?
It just came to me, kind of.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
One of the things I love asking, or Chad and I ask each week that I love the answers to, is Wisconsin Valley Conference. You're talking about track. We've talking obviously a lot about football. Who's your favorite team to compete against? What's your best rivalry for you?
By the way, I saw a social media post from you last week, so I got a sense here.
There's some, it's West. It's and everything. Yeah.
How did you put it? I think you said this is a fun week or something like that. I think it
Well,
was early in the week.
backstory. No shade on West, but they were posting on Instagram and they kept saying it's hate week.
Yeah.
Oh.
So us at Everest were positive. So we said it's fun week.
Oh, very interesting. How much do you keep an eye on? That's one of the interesting that's different for me, and I'm probably different for you as well, because we had none of this back when we were going to school. How much do you keep an eye on opponents, what they do say online?
I don't pay too much attention, but people do, and it comes around. You normally hear it.
I think I would agree. I think especially just the geography, how close by. I think East and West used to be a huge rivalry. The schools have definitely changed. I would say most West athletes that we have on would say that Everest is their favorite rivalry as well. But kind of piggybacking on that, you guys have had the last 2 years in football anyway, you and Spash have kind of been head-to-head, super close games, came down to conference championships. Is there a little extra juice in that rivalry as well?
Yeah, for sure. Especially with Coach Mitchell being our coach. If his background, he came from there. So I think we got our coach's back, and
kind of a little extra juice for him that week as well, I suppose.
Yeah.
As we look forward for the rest of the season, and we're almost halfway through, where does your team have to be better in order to reach the goals? And you're right now 2-0 in the conference, so conference championship is still very much in play, and of course everybody wants to get to the playoffs and make a nice deep run like DC Everest made last year. Where does your team have to be better in order to get to the level that maybe the team that last year had at Everest?
I think for offense, communication, that's kind of like the big jump from week 2 to 3. Like, especially up front, we had a lot better communication, and we've been doing a lot better with that.
Yeah, so this week is Marshfield. Chad and I spend a lot of time talking leading up to when the guests come about recapping last week, and then eventually we'll preview next week's games. And one of the big things last week, when you get to a second conference game, the picture starts to become a little more clear, right, with the wins and losses. And right now, you guys are undefeated in conference. Spash is undefeated overall. And you guys beat West, so you kind of have the upper hand there. This week is Marshfield, right? And Marshfield's kind of a little different.
They're undefeated in conference.
Right. They're undefeated in conference and haven't really played any of the traditional Wisconsin Valley conference. They beat Eau Claire Memorial last week, but Marshfield, a program with a ton of tradition and success, maybe not so much the last couple of years. So what's the mindset? I know almost every athlete comes in, as they should, says we only care about who we're playing this week and the next game. For you guys, that's Marshfield. What has this week been like? What are you expecting Friday night from Marshfield?
We're expecting they're going to fight hard. We'll fight harder. That's kind of how it always goes. But I don't know. We're kind of expecting the same as every week. We know they're 1-3, but they're 1-0 in conference, and they're still a decent, solid team. Right. So we gotta play hard.
And the one thing about Marshfield is they always have good athletes, right? I mean, sometimes they gel and put it all together, but no matter what, they're always going to have guys who can hit big plays, and they usually have tough, hard-nosed kids on defense too. So that'll be a good one. I'm kind of very interested to see how that one plays out. It should paint the picture a little more clear for us.
It sounds like you're kind of in the mindset that it's not really what they do, it's what you do. It's about executing when you have the football, doing the things that in a lot of ways you did the last couple of weeks. Is that the way you kind of look at it, that, they're going to throw stuff at us, but if we're able to execute, we should be okay?
Yeah. We know our worth.
Jason, anything else before we ask the final question?
No, it's been exciting to watch. I mean, when we get preseason and we recap last year and we kind of talk about what's coming this year, the question marks at DC Everest was who's going to be replace that quarterback, who's going to replace the running back. So it's been exciting to watch you have such a great start to the year. So congratulations and good luck the rest of the season.
Thank you.
And we have one final question, which we always ask to our student athlete guests, especially those who are a senior, who are getting towards the end of your high school career, and especially those who have been involved in multiple sports. Based on what you've learned since you started your athletic career at DC Everest, and if you had a freshman either in football or track and field that would say, what piece of advice could you give me to make my time at DC Everest and in the DC Everest athletic program the best possible? What piece of advice would you give to a freshman based on what you've learned over the last number of years?
Right now, I would tell them not to take it for granted. It hasn't hit me like a lot yet, but I know we only have a couple more weeks of football. And I would tell them show up. That's a big one. Show up and work your hardest.
Very good. Congrats again. Last 2 weeks, you put up some really massive numbers, and I know it's not easy in the Wisconsin Valley Conference to put up those kind of numbers. So congratulations on the success. Best of luck as you continue the rest of the season, and then in the spring as well. And thanks for popping on by.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Corbin Enzenroth, DC Everest Evergreen senior running back, joining us as our student athlete guest this week. We're going to come back. We're going to finish our recaps of last week's games and then look ahead to week number 5 coming up. It is the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO.
Are you passionate about local high school sports? So are we. WXCO 98.9 FM is proud to be the only station in Wausau bringing you live, play-by-play coverage of high school sports, game after game, season after season. But we can't do it alone. We are currently seeking local sponsors and community partners who believe in the power of sports to bring people together, inspire youth, and energize our hometown pride. Promote your business, support our local athletes, be heard by thousands of loyal local listeners. If your business is interested in supporting live sports broadcasts while gaining valuable exposure, now is the perfect time to become a WXCO sports sponsor. Message us on our Facebook page or call or text our sales rep, Aaliyah, at 608-573-1597. That's 608-573-1597. Let's keep Wausau High School sports on the air together.
And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. Online at WXCO.FM. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. With Jason Foster, I'm Chad Holmes. And again, always great to have our guests come in. And sorry you couldn't be with us for Coach Jason Wadzinski, but he was terrific. And then, of course, Corbin Enzenroth as well. And it's not easy to get 400 yards in the Wisconsin Valley Conference over a 2-week span. So he's off to a flying start in the conference.
Yeah, and I love kids from programs like that and coming off the year they had. Obviously, we talked a ton last year about Coach and how he had kind of created the new tradition there and how much kids like playing for him. But in a program like DC Everest, or we talked about Edgar and Stratford, and that, like, it's when that superstar graduates and it's your turn, what are you going to do with it, right? Are you going to be the guy, or are you going to give Coach the opportunity to give somebody else a chance to be the guy? And it looks like he's done a great job of taking the reins and picking up where Bankston left off.
Let's finish up talking about last week. We are up to the Merrillwood CWC. And Edgar took on Marquette Academy of Illinois. It's a normal Edgar football game, I tell you. It's like we're back in 1973. It's like back before the offensive explosion, because every week Edgar doesn't really score a lot, but boy, their defense is stingy, and they were able to beat Marquette Academy 9-6. It went right down to the wire. A 24-yard field goal by Anthony Trewicki with 3.7 seconds left, broke a 6-6 tie. Offensively, Gavin Maurer, 13 rushes, 71 yards. Maverick Butt, 22 rushes, 68 yards. Kind of jumped out to me. 3.1 yards per rush, 2 yards per pass. Edgar has been great defensively, but they got to get a little bit more, don't they, offensively?
Yeah, I think so. When you look at those playoff matchups, right? Like the years they have not made it to state, which in the last few hasn't been many, but
right.
Before that, I mean, that's kind of what it's come down to, their ability to score points. And I mean, this is as classic, an Everest football game. I don't know much about Marquette Academy, and they probably didn't know much about Edgar, but they know a lot more now. But I think what it speaks to is the great defense, rush the football, and then even the when you look at Coach Sins, right, the old school coaches, right, 3 phases, right, offense, defense, special teams. So to be able to execute a field goal with 3.7 seconds left, that doesn't just happen either. I mean, there's time spent on that on practice, but I agree with you. I think defense wins championships, but you do have to score points, especially in the playoffs, especially being up a division like they are too. So it'll be interesting to see what that bracket looks like and who sits in front of them.
And the thing is, we're just 4 weeks in. There's time to develop all phases of the game for all these teams.
I think the other side note to that one is, from the sounds of it, Marquette Academy is a heck of a football program as well.
Yeah. Abbotsford beat Pacelli 42-18. So Abby has won 3 games in a row. They're 3-1 overall, 2-0 in the conference. Pacelli 1-3, 0-2. It was a quick start for Abbotsford. They led 42-0 at halftime. Irvin Aguilera didn't have to do a whole lot. Only 5 attempts, 98 yards, a touchdown, but also he did get an interception on defense, returned that one for a score. And Abbotsford does what Abbotsford does. 33 rushes for 341 yards, 4 touchdowns as a team. So no big high school sports show jinx for Jacob Knapp-Miller, as he was our guest last week.
That makes me happy. The other thing I would say about that is we used to talk about this with Edgar all the time too. And that's not every week for Abbotsford, but in a game like that, 42-0 at half, 42-0 final score, those kids, I know they're a little banged up. I know they lost their quarterback early in the year, so that gives them the opportunity to play some other kids and get some different opportunities, and looks like that's what they did Friday night against Pacelli.
Auburndale was glad not to see the Edgar defense for a second straight week. They struggled against Edgar in the first week of the conference, but they bounced back big time, defeating Pittsville 41-0. So Auburndale 3-1, 1-1. Pittsville 1-3, 1-1. Peyton Weinberger 7 of 8 passing, 65 yards and a score. Nathan Van Wy had 14 carries, worth 109 yards and 2 touchdowns. Josh Lundgren, big on the defensive side for Auburndale, 11 tackles and an interception. Dawson Luther tried to get the Pittsville offense going. He led the way with 14 rushes, 92 yards. Auburndale just, again, very consistent. The last few years, they've, when they win when they're supposed to win. They just come out there and they do it, and another solid effort for them.
Yeah, and in these matchups going forward now, like they have Edgar in their rearview mirror, so they're
that's always a good thing.
Right. They kind of gear up for the rest of the season in a playoff run.
Then Assumption, they're 2-0 in the conference, and this is their last year in 11-player football. They're going 8-player next year, but they're trying to finish with a playoff run, and they defeated Iola Scandinavia 32-26 in overtime last week. 2-2 overall, 2-0 in the conference for Assumption. Iola 1-3, 0-2, banged up Iola team right now. But Braxton Steinert for Assumption, 27 rushes, 155 yards and a touchdown. Camden Martin, 7.5 tackles. So good for Assumption to try and finish up their 11-man foray with some success.
And these seniors there will be the last team that played 11-man football at Assumption. So
never know what the future.
Good,
because
very valid point.
We've
can always
seen
come
teams
back.
Because like McDonald's going back to 11-player after this year. So you never know. And the plan is for every school, they want to have that decision because that means more kids are coming into their schools.
Exactly.
8-player. Speaking of which, last week, Newman Catholic back on the winning track. Cardinals defeated Niagara 22-14. Quincy Fender, 18 rushes, 132 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Tristan Fisher defensively, 11.5 tackles. Everett Pent, 9.5 tackles. Cardinals, again, a little banged up. They jumped out quickly, 22-0, but able to hold off a Niagara rally and a solid win for Newman. And again, I think something that doesn't get said enough is Newman has this run in 8-player football where everybody sort of expects them to come out there, roll the helmets out, and win. It's not that way. They're like all these other 8-player teams. They're one of the smaller 8-player schools now, and yet they find ways to win. And they give great credit to the coaching staff and the players and the whole community because it's not as easy as sometimes they make it appear.
No, it most certainly is not. And obviously they took one on the chin last week against their big rivalry.
Almond.
Yep, against Almond. And I think if Coach Micklig were sitting here, and at some point he probably will, we can ask him.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure we will get him on.
But these are the years when you coach like crazy, right?
Yep.
Or even when you have last year when they had all the injuries. Like take his state championships and gold balls, and that's what'll get him into the Hall of Fame, and I'm sure he will end up there. But ultimately, as coaches, you look back and reflect upon these wins in seasons like this, and you do a lot more. You do a lot more coaching and have to make a lot more challenging decisions and a lot bigger problems to solve in a season like this. So good, they're off to a great start, 3-1, and keep rolling forward.
Yeah.
Other side note to that one: so the Warriors played at DC Everest last week, Steam Stadium, and it's the first time that I've seen that I'm coming home from Steed Stadium, driving down Bridge Street on my way to my house on the east side, and lights at town or lights at Balliet Field. So over at Newman, I come down the one. I'm like, what is going on here? What is all this?
Their game went longer.
Yeah. So it was very cool to see how lit up that is and how that changes the look of that neighborhood. So that was exciting for them, and have those night games is great for those kids to have that experience.
It certainly is, and we heard from Quincy a couple weeks ago. Friday Night Lights is a real thing.
Yeah.
It really is. Also in the CW8, Almond Bancroft 3-1 beat Port Edwards 59-6. Tri-County is undefeated in that conference, and they beat Wild Rose 70-12. So, and Marion Tigerton got a forfeit win. So it's actually interesting looking at that conference, and we'll talk about more of the matchups coming up. But you got Almond, Bancroft, and Newman, I think perennially kind of the top teams in that conference. Port last season tied for the conference championship of those two schools. But this year, right now, the leaders are Tri-County and Marion Tigerton. So again, even an 8-player, there's some change from what we're used to seeing, and it's just a very interesting first 4 weeks of the season here in Central Wisconsin high school football.
Yeah, but you forget about matchup or who you're playing. When you score 70 points, there's a lot of good things going on in your program. And obviously it probably speaks more to your athletes and somewhat to the opponent. But, yes, I kind of like it. We've talked about it in the CWC large and small, too. Like, there definitely is some shifting of those programs and where they're lining up and how those matchups are falling. So, yeah, it's been fun to watch.
The top two teams in 8-player football are both in the North Central East 8-player. McDonald, number 2 ranked. They beat defending state champs Owen Withy 39-0. And Gilman is the number 1 ranked team in the state. They beat Cornell 37-0. Gilman and McDonald play this week. 1 versus 2. So it'll be interesting on that side. Thorpe also beat Lake Holcomb, and Alma Center Lincoln beat New Auburn 30-28. Athens is now 3-1. So the Falcons just down the road here, down Highway 29. They are 3-1 after beating Bruce 26-16. Evan Pacell had 30 rushes, 155 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Added 10.5 tackles and an interception. That's almost similar to what we see with Treef Stoffel, filling those stat sheets.
He sleeps in Saturday mornings, it sounds like.
And then also Phillips beat Rib Lake 42-18. Phillips 3-1. Rib Lake 1-3. Chequamegon Butternut Mercer 54. Prentice 30. And Flambeau stays undefeated. They beat Hurley, who's now 3-1, 40-8, and Flambeau 42-8. So Flambeau's a team to keep an eye on as we get closer and closer to the new 32-team playoff, which will be in 8-player football this year. So that is the recap of week number 4. At halftime for the 11-player games this week, we'll be at the exact halfway point of the regular season. 8-player, we are at the halfway point, 4 out of 8 games. So the season flying right on by. And we're going to talk about week number 5 coming up in 1 minute. It is the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO.
We are the NFHS. That stands for the National Federation of State High School Associations. But really, what we stand for, together with the WIAA, are the 178,000 high school sports students in Wisconsin. And so we stand. We stand for the runners, soccer and basketball players. We stand for their coaches, administrators, and officials. We stand for the swimmers, football players, and wrestlers. We stand for the golfers, softball, and volleyball players. We stand as the national leader and advocate for high school athletics and all who participate in them and make them possible. Because it is our purpose to ensure that high school students get to play, perform, and compete together. To learn more about who we are and what we stand for, visit nfhs.org.
And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. Online at WXCO.FM. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO. And on the Civic Media app. And again on YouTube.com on the 98.9 WXCO channel. With Jason Foster, I'm Chad Holmes. Week number 5. And as I said earlier, some action tomorrow night. In fact, we will have a game for you right here on 98.9 WXCO tomorrow night. And 2 more then on Friday. But let's start with the Wisconsin Valley Conference, and the big game is a crossover game. It really is a very intriguing game as the Hudson Raiders make the trek over to Gerke Field, take on the Stevens Point Panthers. Hudson 4-0 after a nice win against New Richmond last week. Stevens Point, as I said earlier, 49 points per game offensively on their 4-0 start. Panthers and the Hudson Raiders.
Yeah, I would have to say that Spash is probably sick and tired of us saying they haven't played anybody, so they're probably
right.
excited to get one. I would say this: this one I think really will kind of give some clarity to where both of these teams are at, because when West played Hudson, I mean Hudson won at the end, kind of going away, but it was a football game for most of the game. Spash has not really been challenged. So I think this game will kind of tell us quite a bit more about who Hudson is, and then I think it'll also tell us quite a bit more about how the Wisconsin Valley East kind of matches up as we move forward.
Absolutely. So, again, that game Friday night, 7 o'clock kickoff at Gerke Field. Then DC Everest will try to be 3-0 in the conference, move into first place by themselves, because that will be a non-conference game for Stevens Point. DC Everest home against Marshfield. And Marshfield, again, this reminds me a little bit of last year. I think it kind of counted them out because they were ugly early, but then they came to Tom Field and knocked off Wausau West, earned a playoff spot. And as we talked about before, Denny Gadel knows his way around a football team. Coming off the big game against West last week, I would not be surprised to see Marshfield give a battle against DC Everest Friday night.
Yeah, I think like we talked about with Corbin a little bit, that Marshfield, especially within the conference, right? I mean, that there's the outliers, New Richmond, Rice Lake, and the Menominee, their crossover games. But I look at Marshfield brings athletes every time. Coach Gadel's been doing it a long time, like you said. And I think Everest is definitely the favorite in this one. But the other things we talked about both off air and on this little bit, when you talk about playoffs, and you just mentioned it again too, how they would kind of write them off for dead early and then they found their way in. I think when you talk about Marshfield, Rapids, North, Memorial, probably throw West in there at this point too until they get a couple more wins under their belt. Like, these games really make a huge difference as far as not only how the conference lays out, but who gets in with the 4 wins probably for sure, and then you kind of creep down into who might get in with 3 wins. So games like this are really big, and Marshfield has to start looking at the possibility of who do we steal one from in order to get enough wins to guarantee ourselves getting in. This would be a great place for them to start.
Wisconsin Rapids at Wausau West, 6:35 p.m. airtime Friday night right here on 98.9 WXCO, WXCO.FM, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. Lincoln is 0-4, 0-2. Warriors 2-2, 1-1. Warriors are 2-0 at Tom Field so far this year. They've done the job when they've been the favorite. They've come up short when they've been the dog. They're the favorite here this week. But, again, I think for Wausau West, it's trying to maybe reestablish the offense a little bit.
Yeah, I think like we talked about earlier as well, like when with DC Everest, when things didn't go well, one of the ways offensively that you right the ship is by being able to rush the football. I think that's one thing West looks to do this week. Obviously, Rapids struggled again to stop the run last week, so that's kind of something West will look to do. On the flip side of it, Rapids is looking for one good win to kind of light that fire under Coach Krenz and a new staff and a new traditions and everything they do. And they watched the game last week, and they think that they've been chucking it a lot, but maybe their game plan changes a little bit, and they look to run the football a little bit more this week. But it's a little bit of an intriguing matchup. West looks to get right, and Rapids looks to find that first win for the program.
And the other game in the conference is from the western part of the conference now. We could talk about Eau Claire and Eau Claire Memorial and Eau Claire North. Memorial hosting North. And I was saying during the break that with that win last week, North has 1 win towards playoffs. here's a great opportunity for number 2. And for Memorial, again, they have been better this year. They have been much better defensively this year, not giving up nearly the points they gave up a year ago. They went to Marshfield last week and battled right to the end of that football game. Like you said, every one of these teams, there's still a pathway to the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think the other element to this that we don't know a lot about because they're from the western half, but this is the rivalry game, right? This is their version of the good old log game, North and Memorial, and so I'm sure there's going to be a great crowd as they're playing at home in this rivalry or on campus for the first time ever. So it's probably going to be a great atmosphere, and I'm actually very interested to see how this one turns out.
Great Northern Conference, and 3 of the 4 games are tomorrow night. So some early high school football action. And tomorrow night, 6:35 airtime right here on 98.9 WXCO, WXCO.FM, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO. And on the Civic Media app, it's Wassa East at Mosinee. Wassa East 1-3, 0-2 in the conference. Mosinee 2-2, 1-1 in the conference. I think both these teams feel they're still very much in it because there's still those high expectations. But boy, this turns into a significant game. And I think, again, we've talked about this with some of the folks from East and Mosinee. This is going to become, I think, a pretty good rivalry in this conference.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, there's a lot on the line this week, right? East needs to right the ship and get that conference win. Mosinee looks to get back on track. I'm sure they're not happy about that loss to the T-Birds, and you hit it on the head. I think back to Tree Stoffel sitting in that chair last year and Jesse Nebgezik sitting in that chair, and what did they say? Like, this is it. This is the rivalry. This is the football-only conference, but in that time, they've had some good matchups, and in non-conference in their other sports, they've had some pretty heated matchups. So I think this is going to be a great game. I think there's going to be a lot of emotion there, and I think depending on the outcome, really brings things into clarity in the Great Northern Conference.
Merrill Blue Jays. We talked Merrill football earlier in the show. And the Blue Jays 2-2 overall, 1-1 in the conference. The Antigo Red Robins 1-3, 0-2. We heard about the rivalry game. It is the War on 64, and we heard about the trophy. Kind of a cool. They got an actual Highway 64 sign as part of the trophy. And we've heard as well that the road team has been winning this one on a rather consistent basis in recent years, and the Merrill Blue Jays want to win at home tomorrow night. And I think Merrill comes in having to feel really good after beating Medford. That is a significant win. As we heard, first time in a decade they were able to do that. Antigo comes off a couple of really tough losses. They got to get something going early if they want to try to pull off the upset.
Yeah, I think until they do something different, they kind of sit at the bottom of the conference. I think Merrill, we talked about it last week and again this week, even though they're 1-1 in conference, they have the 2 traditional big teams in their rearview mirror, and they came away with a really great win against Medford and played a really great game against Mosinee the week before. So for lack of a better way of putting it, Merrill still controls their own destiny when it comes to a conference championship, or at a minimum, a shared conference championship down the road, because they win out, somebody else is going to have a loss along with them. So really big game for Merrill, I think. I think it's great for them to have this one at home and build on their momentum. Lakeland
at Medford, and normally, you see a team that's 4-0 overall, 2-0 in the conference, taking on a team 1-3 overall, 1-1 in the conference. You would say, Medford's the undefeated team. No, Lakeland is the undefeated team. Massive game in the GNC. That's tomorrow night again.
Yeah, this one too. I don't know, not having seen Medford in person yet, I keep waiting for them to really do it. You had mentioned that earlier that they had 6 turnovers last week, right? That is certainly an anomaly for any team, in particular a team from Medford. So they clean that up. Lakeland is rolling. I think this is probably the matchup of the week in the GNC.
Tomahawk at Rhinelander. Tomahawk. This is Friday night. 4-0, 2-0. Rhinelander 2-2, 1-1. Rhinelander, a really good win at Tom Field last week. They gave Lakeland, it was a seesaw game, a 43-32 final 2 weeks ago. Again, you have an undefeated team, but I would almost say that I expect Rhinelander to win. I mean, it's one of those cases where I think that sometimes the records here, it doesn't mean that much at this point of the season.
Right. I mean, I certainly, we don't ever put money. It's for recreational purposes only, right,
Exactly.
Chad? I would have a really hard time betting against Tomahawk at this point.
They're finding ways,
I was
right?
going to say, until they prove that they're not. And I think such a big part of that is playing as a team, kind of playing together, having those experiences and success in other areas. But at the same time, Rhinelander has played well, and probably, I mean, at some point, I think what potentially gets Tomahawk is a team that's bigger and has more depth and is able to play for 4 quarters and have that consistency. Is Rhinelander that team? I'm not sure. We'll find out.
CWC Large, some good matchups in this one, and we got a couple of 4-0 teams. I love those undefeated battles at this point of the season. Amherst 4-0, 2-0. Loyal Greenwood 4-0, 2-0 in Loyal. And as I said earlier, that's going to be a fun atmosphere. It's a field that, if I'm remembering correctly, there was actually like some dirt on it too. And I mean, it's like it's again, this was a number of years ago when Newman was in the Cloverwood and Loyal Greenwood was in the Cloverwood.
The Greyhounds mean business.
And Amherst has this beautiful new field that he played at. This is not that. This is going to be this is a true road game for Amherst. So I'm really curious to see what this one is, because Amherst has been so good this season.
Yeah, I also think that Amherst, obviously isn't going to take them for granted as a 4-0 team.
Right.
And this ends up being a really quality win for them. Can Loyal Greenwood compete, keep it close long enough to make it a football game, or does Amherst truly establish their dominance in the CWC Large this season?
Stratford at Wyowega Fremont. Stratford 2-2, 2-0. Wyowega 3-1, 1-1. Another very intriguing matchup, and for the second straight week, Stratford going on the road against a very solid conference opponent.
Yeah, and Whitburn kind of handed it to Wyowega Fremont a couple weeks ago. Stratford and Whitburn had a overtime barn burner last week. So, I mean, I think everybody for the first time realizes in a long time, is Stratford gettable this year? Vulnerable, that's the better word.
The V word
for
that you
sure.
don't use around Stratford very often.
Exactly. So obviously Wyowega Fremont, I'm sure this week in practice has probably a little extra edge to it. But I think Stratford got that. I think that's a big win for them last week. They had to work super hard for it. It was overtime. Was that the turning point in this season for Stratford? I think we'll find out in this game.
And real quickly, something that I don't think we've talked about enough about Stratford is, while they've had some struggles offensively, their defense has been really good.
Yeah.
So I think that's been carrying them up to this point. And one would expect that the offense is going to start to pick up a little bit as they continue. And then Marathon at Colby, both teams 1-3 and 0-2. It's not truly an elimination game, but boy, you really want this one to keep those playoff hopes alive.
Yep, and I think Colby's kind of been down, so I think this is one when they look at who's left on your schedule and where the wins come, I'm sure Marathon goes into this one thinking that that's the one. And I think kind of going back up to Whitburn, Spencer Columbus too, that's Spencer Columbus has been playing tough. Whitburn's coming off a tough loss, probably one Whitburn thinks is a good one for them to get. So could be a good matchup in that one as well.
Merrill CWC, Edgar back into the league, 4-0, 2-0 in the conference at Pittsville. Pittsville has not won a game on the field. They did get the forfeit because Rosholt leaving the conference, so they've struggled so far. Edgar looking very, very, very likely to again, it's easy for me to say, but tough matchup for Pittsville.
Definitely. And I think just generally speaking, last year I felt like into week 4 or 5 throughout the season, we felt like Pittsville was heading in the right direction. They haven't really showed us any signs of that yet this year.
Abbotsford and Assumption both are 2-0 in the conference. Abbey 3-1 overall. Assumption 2-2. For Assumption, it's about slowing down that Abbotsford run game.
Yeah, and that's a really tough task. I don't know exactly what Assumption's depth is, other than to say it's probably not great as they look to go 8-man moving forward. So I would say that's a tall task. That's going to be a really full defensive box against Abbotsford, but no one else has really been able to slow them down to this point. So it could be a tough night for Assumption.
Auburndale gets their conference forfeit, as this was the week they would face Rosholt, but They face Bark River Harris, and I went and did some research on Bark River Harris. They're from the UP.
Yes,
so
they are. I remember them from my days at Northland Pine. We never played them, but they were in the what the heck was the name of the conference? We had a large and small. It was the West Pac, so the Western Upper Peninsula Conference, and then they were in the smaller version of that. So they played like Lakeland and Hubble and Ontonagon and some of those other smaller teams up there.
I should have known you would know about them being up north. And then you have Pacelli and Iola Scandinavia. Again, one of those games where one of the teams gets that first conference win. So, you talk about the games that have 4-0, 2-0. These are just as significant. These teams want these games so badly because they see this as a great opportunity to maybe spark something.
Yep, these are the matchups where they get those 1-2, possibly that third win, which could get a team into the playoffs.
And then we look at 8-player and some good matchups in the CW8. As we mentioned earlier, teams like Newman Catholic and Almond Bancroft and Port Edwards, the tri-champs a year ago. This year, leading the way is Marion Tigerton and Tri-County. And you got Newman Catholic, 3-1 overall, 2-1 in the conference at Marion Tigerton, 3-1 overall. They lost a tight one to a Rosholt in the week opener, a non-conference game. They're 3-0 in the conference. The game will be heard on the Sports 2 stream of WXCO.FM and the Civic Media app, starting with the pregame show Friday at 6:40 and also on tape delay following the Wausau West game. But not an easy road trip for Newman Catholic as Marion Tigerton trying to stay undefeated in the conference. So Cardinals a little banged up, but it's going to be a good one, I think.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, sometimes when you have some success like Marion Tigerton, haven't had it in the past, it's hard to maintain that when you play a team who does have that pedigree and that style of coaching. So this should be a great matchup, and not looking too far ahead, but jumping down to that next game too. Like, there's the potential after this week, if things really went, there could be 4 teams who are 3-1 sitting in the top of that conference.
You're
next
exactly
week.
right, because Tri-County 4-0 overall, 3-0 in the conference at Almond Bancroft, 3-1 and 2-1. Almond's only loss came to Marion Tigerton a couple of weeks back. As Coach said, I mean, we got 3-0. 3-0, 2-1, 2-1. If the 2-1s beat the 3-0s, then all of a sudden 4 teams are at 3-1. So another very interesting game.
I think also that Tri-County game being in Almond Bancroft, as Newman would report, that's a tough place to play football. So that could be a good one.
You're exactly right. And North Central East 8, McDonald and Gilman. And I said it, you don't get this too often. Number 1 ranked team in the state in this week's coaches poll, Gilman. Number 2 ranked team in the state, McDonald Central. So the thing about it is now with 32 teams in the playoffs, I think both teams are well on their way to making the postseason. But it does give a rather intriguing midseason look at some of the best teams on 8-player football.
Yeah, this should be a great matchup. These are always the ones that, and rankings even through 4 weeks, are suspect at best. We know that, but this is one of those games when you look at it, you just want it to be a great game, right? You want it to be a 40-42 or whatever the case is.
And then finally, Athens, looking for their 4th win of the season. They're at Hurley. And again, Hurley's had a lot of success in 11-player football and now in 8-player, and they come off a tough loss to Flambeau. But Athens looking to try to work their way towards the postseason. So.
Yeah, Hurley, God, I want to call them the midgets.
I know.
I think they're the North Stars. Is that
like
what
that.
they are now?
Yep.
Yeah, but Coach Erickson's a great football coach. So I'd be interested to pick his brain a little bit and see what he does with that straight T backfield that he used to do in 11-man, what that looks like in 8-man football.
One of the 2 Scott Ericksons out there.
Yeah.
Hey, we're out of time, so we'll see you again next week.
Yeah, excited to see how this week's games match up and talk about them next week. So good luck.
Thanks for joining us here on WXCO.